Hi guys, I'm back with chapter 10 today. I really hope you're enjoying it. I think it's pretty great. Let's make a start, shall we? There's no way Pearl is coming back to us if she is naked, man. This has thrown Snoop into a mess. I stare up at a stain on our bedroom ceiling. It's shaped like the world if the UK was missing. Oh, and like the United States and Australia. Basically, it's nothing like the world. Closing my eyes, I tell myself that from this point on, I'm only making paper cranes to get my wish to say goodbye to Mum, because there's no point in wishing to find Pearl, because we've already done that. I haven't told Billy Naked Man is Pearl's girlfriend, though, although it seems like he's already guessed it. He didn't eat his chips when we got back, and Brian didn't eat the battered sausage. I ate everything instead, and now my belly aches big time. I curl up into a tiny ball, clutching my stomach. This isn't how it was supposed to go. By now, we were supposed to have Pearl back, ready to visit the poop garden as soon as it's done. Now everything in my entire life is poop, and it's nothing to do with the project observation of plants. At 5:43 the next morning, Billy appears in front of me like a ghost. He tugs my duvet and says he's had another nightmare. Climbing out of bed, I take him to Mum's armchair and adjust the swallow cushion so Billy can lie back on it. Sit here, I whisper, and I bring my duvet over and sit down and wrap it around us too. We're like a big caterpillar. The armchair is safe, and I continue the story I was telling Billy about the two boys on an armchair of their own. The storm did not stop, I say, and the armchair was tossed about so violently that one of the boys began to slip. His brother tried to hold on to him, but his clothes were so wet that he lost grip. He couldn't save the boy from falling into the water. The boy left on the armchair screamed that his brother had fallen, and then he jumped in after him, and the armchair was left bobbing on the surface with no passengers. But no matter how it rained and how much it rocked from side to side, the armchair did not sink. It stayed right there on the ocean's surface, waiting for the boys to come back, as if it knew that before too long they would. When Billy falls asleep, I think about how we're the two boys in the story. I think about how we're all at sea and how our past is disappearing. But most of all, I think about how I'm afraid of the future. It makes my stomach ache all over again. That morning, before we go to school, I remind Dad it's our Year 6 school trip to the Garden of Eden Garden Centre today. Dad looks at me and says he'd forgotten. I told you about it when we went shopping, I offer, shoveling chocolate cereal into my mouth. Dad blows on his mug of tea before taking a slurp and says it's okay, and what do I need? £3, I reply quickly. We're allowed to buy a pencil. Dad suddenly grunts and sets his mug down, then flops his hand onto the table. £3 for a pencil? Then he says it again, even though I heard him quite clearly the first time. In my day, you could have bought a packet of pencils, felt tips, a sharpener and a big eraser for that, and still had enough left over for a sherbet dip. In his day, he could probably have bought all those things and a Mercedes car and still had enough left over to buy a speedboat. When I tell him so, Dad snorts and says there's £3 in his wallet and he'll have less of the cheek. The wallet's in his jeans pocket in his bedroom. To be precise, it's in his jeans pocket lying on the floor in his bedroom. As I'm about to reach down and seize the wallet, I notice the photo frame we bought in the shopping mall. Dad has placed a photo of Mum inside it and left it on his bedside table. My fingers reach forward, and as I pick up the frame, it's as though someone's plucking on my heartstrings. With the photo frame in my hand, I sit cross-legged on the bed. Mum's standing in front of an ocean and looks so close I could almost reach into the photo and touch her. I try, but my fingers are stopped by the cold glass. I wish more than anything that you were here with me now, Mum. I feel silly talking to myself. Peering closer, I see she's holding an old-fashioned glass bottle that I bet she found on the beach. I imagine Mum sending the bottle out to sea with a note inside to me saying, "Dearest son, I love you, and although I had to go, you're not to be sad, and you don't have to say goodbye." But I do, Mum, I whisper, my fingers tracing the shape of the bottle she's holding. Last year at my old school, Mr. Kipling asked us to write a message in a bottle to someone we admired. I wrote to Alexander Fleming, who was a Scottish biologist, pharmacologist and botanist, and who accidentally discovered penicillin, which was the beginning of modern antibiotics. I wrote in my letter to Fleming that I was very grateful because when I had tonsillitis, antibiotics made me feel better. Without him, my throat had been very, very sore indeed. Others wrote about their mums, and I felt bad when I heard their messages. I felt like I'd forgotten my mum. I got a gold star for Alexander Fleming, but I didn't want it. With no one around to see me, I bring the photo to my mouth and kiss the glass image, and I imagine I'm kissing Mum's cheek. Carefully, I set the photo back on Dad's table and reach down for Dad's wallet. I open it, looking for the £3. To be honest, I'm half expecting a load of moths to fly out because lately Dad's always saying we can't spend too much. A scratch card and a few pieces of paper fall out. They're just receipts, and yes, I look at them. I haven't given up on Snoop completely. On the left of the wallet, Dad always had a photo of Billy, me and Pearl. But now he has neatly trimmed Pearl out of the photo. It looks wrong, as if Pearl was never even part of our lives. Another piece of paper flutters out of the wallet and I pick it up and read it. There's a woman's name and telephone number on it. Camille. We don't know anyone called Camille. Camille sounds fancier than a fondant fancy. Camille sounds more interesting than finding out the word muscle comes from the Latin term little mouse, which is what Romans thought muscles looked like. Who is Camille? When I climb onto the school coach, I can't stop thinking that Pearl has Naked Man, and now it seems like Dad has Camille. But the worst thing is that Billy and I have been told nothing. It feels like when you're young, everyone thinks it's better not to tell you stuff. But they should tell you, because being young doesn't mean being stupid, and I reckon we could handle being told the truth. Lies are the thing that hurt the most. Earlier, when I went back to the breakfast table, I tried to ask Dad about Camille, but I kept bottling it and saying camel, and Dad thought I had a newfound interest in beasts of the desert. When I snapped that I didn't, Dad said I had the hump. It wasn't even funny, although Billy laughed so much he was almost sitting in a yellow puddle of his own making. Beckett Rumsey, can you please take a seat on the coach, said Mr. Beagle. We haven't got all day. We have, but I'm not going to be the one who says it. After a student head count, Mr. Beagle takes a seat at the front beside Mrs. Dixon, Mimi's mother. I overhear Mimi tell Neva that her mum offered to come and to help us. Mrs. Dixon looks like she could be a model, and when she starts chatting to Mr. Beagle, he laughs like a hyena reading a joke book. A small missile of saliva lands on Mrs. Dixon's shoulder and she looks horrified. He shuts up pretty quickly after that and signals to Sam Swiss, the school's groundsman, doubling as a driver, to get going. Everyone cheers. It's 9:30 and we're on our way. At 9:32, it's obvious that we're moving at the speed of a tortoise. Sam Swiss is muttering under his breath that the speed limit round here is 30 and you should never reach that point because then you might slip up and go 31 miles per hour and then you'd be breaking the law, and you cannot break the law in front of children. Well, let me tell him, speed limits never bothered Abitha Nana, because once, when she found out there was a half-price sale at her favourite clothes shop, she strapped me into the car and we took off like a rocket. Half an hour later, when we've travelled the 1 mile to the Garden of Eden Garden Centre, a man with a goatee beard shaped like a goat welcomes us off the boat and says, I thought you'd be here ages ago. Where did you come from, the Arctic? Mrs. Dixon looks at him like he's something on the bottom of her shoe, and he quickly smiles and says, Welcome to the Garden of Eden, where you will find a paradise of plants. He sniffs. I secretly diagnose hay fever, and takes us into a section where there are loads of small trees in pots and tiny tubs of star-shaped flowers in every colour of the rainbow. Goatee Guy tells us we can look around. I look around. It takes 30 seconds. Yep, I'm done looking around. Half the class are the same. They've already skived off and gone to the gift shop to buy pencils. Out of the shop, everyone, shouts Mr. Beagle, his face mottled like corned beef. Plants first, pencils second, unless you're already in the queue, and then you might as well pay. I'm next to the till and quickly buy myself one of the Garden of Eden pencils, and I have enough money left over for a small notebook with a picture of frog spawn on the front, which looks like a dessert Abitha Nana once made called tapioca, and I refuse to eat it because I didn't eat tadpoles. When Mr. Beagle drags us all out of the shop, he plonks us in front of Goatee Guy again, who shows us a few plants called annuals with a wave of his hand. Dante Moffat says he thought annuals were books no one wanted at Christmas. They live fast and die young, mutters Knuckles under his breath. I glance over at him and he flicks his eyes away. What's his problem? I want butterflies in my garden design, announces Neva, pulling up her blazer sleeve and showing me a drawing of a butterfly she's done on her arm. Butterflies are so boring. Mimi's eyeballs do a 360 and she smooths down her school jumper. Mrs. Dixon glances over at Mimi and Mimi smiles back and gives her mother a microwave with her fingers. Goatee Guy tries to hush everyone by saying he's very grateful for all this interest in plants. He says we're going to have to choose outdoor plants and some need certain types of soil. Knuckles is suddenly spouting on about acid and alkaline. Goatee Guy is clearly delighted and nodding his head. I nudge Knuckles and ask how he knows all this acid and alkaline stuff, and his face falls faster than a yo-yo on the way down. Stop talking about my dad, hisses Knuckles, glaring at me. I told you, he's gone. The thing is, I wasn't even talking about his dad. Mr. Beagle, getting fed up with all the talking and shuffling about, says we all need to give our mouths a rest because there's too much chatting and time wasting. Instead, we need to go and write notes about what plants we'd like to include in our garden design, and who knows, if we come up with some good ideas, we might win. Mrs. Dixon is off like a whippet looking at plants. Anyone would think that she was designing the garden. Knuckles hurries off on his own and he's checking the leaves of the plants and writing a little list. Goatee Guy looks impressed and is nodding his head in appreciation. Well, not to be outdone, I start checking leaves and writing a little list too. It's a mistake to check the cacti this way though. Oh, get you writing notes, says Mimi, leaning over me, her plait dangling over my shoulder. I do a little shimmy to free myself and then I put my hand over my notebook because I don't want her copying me. Mimi says she couldn't care less what I'm writing. Did you ask your mum about the mix-up? Because you said it was a mix-up even though it sounds like your mum is the one who's mixed up. There's a mean glint in her eyes. It wasn't my mum, I mutter. It was my dad's girlfriend, Pearl. Weird, says Mimi, clearly delighted that she's discovered a bit of gossip. Quiet everyone and gather round, says Mr. Beagle, splitting Mimi and me up. This is a special project we're doing here and it needs to be 100% commitment from you. It's not an excuse to dodge class and chat. This is going to be the best project the school has ever undertaken. Better than the project we did on the Romans, shouts Dante Moffat. OK, maybe the garden can't quite compete with the Romans, but it's still important. We're going to learn so much from it. Dante Moffat opens his mouth, but Mr. Beagle gets there first. No, we're not going to learn more from it than we learned from the Romans. Can we please forget about the Romans for a moment? This is entirely different. What ideas can you get from the garden centre, and what can you bring to the garden design? I can bring worms, says Dante Moffat. We don't need anyone to bring worms, replies Mr. Beagle. The worms will bring themselves. OK, I'll bring chocolate, adds Dante Moffat. My mum says gardens are for sitting in with a cup of tea and a chocolate bar. So if we're bringing something to the garden, I'll bring that. Right. We need to get away from the Romans and the chocolate bars, says Mr. Beagle. This is about things growing. Let's remember that. While all this is going on, Knuckles is still scribbling in his notebook, and as I glance over his shoulder, I can see what he's doing. He's drawing a little tree covered in apples, and beside it he's written Dad in bubble letters. Unable to resist, I ask, You said your dad is gone. Has he gone to a better place? I remember how Abitha Nana always used to say Mum had gone to a better place when what she really meant was that Mum was dead. Once, when I was little, I said I wanted to go to the better place to be with Mum, and Abitha Nana said I couldn't. I was furious. Why were they stopping me going to the better place? Knuckles glares at me and tightens his jaw and says his dad hasn't gone to a better place. In fact, he's gone to the worst place in the universe, and if I'm mocking him, I'm going to get a knuckle sandwich. I say I don't want a knuckle sandwich, thank you, because I've already got a fish paste sandwich in my bag. As I walk away to look at the herbs, I know I've said something stupid, but I have no idea what it was. Okay, chapter 10. I'll be back tomorrow with chapter 11. Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.